I would encourage musicians and producers, young producers, millennial kids and producers, that if you could at least study one African instrument and introduce it into your music, you will make a world of a difference. Because what the people are saying out there in the Western world and other parts of the world is, give me something that I don't know, and then I'll listen to you. We've got some amazing hip-hop artists in this country. But do you honestly think we could send our top hip-hop artists to the States?
Nkululeko on Cultr.
My boo, yeah. My boo, yeah. My boo, yeah. Africa. Na 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 ho. Na 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 ho ho. My boo, yeah. My boo, yeah. Africa.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mohamed.
Thank you.
My guest today is a very, very special person. His music is very special. Okay, so whilst his peers were busy making pop music, jazz music, Mr. Pops Mohamed spent some time to study, discover sounds all across the world, mostly in Africa, and he would infuse it into his sounds. And that's why some of his albums, if you go on Spotify, Pops Mohamed, even when you go on YouTube, you will hear some of the most fascinating sounds. I invited him today because I'm fascinated by it. Mr. Mohamed, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Wow. Okay, that was beautiful. Maybe even before we talk about the music, you were speaking to the driver coming to here on the road to this interview, and I overheard you talking to him about religion.
Yeah.
And you were talking about Christianity and the history of Christianity. Maybe if we can start there, what does religion mean to you? What does it mean to the world? What is your interpretation of what God is, for example?
Yeah, religion is a very sacred thing. It's a very personal thing. I'm very fortunate that me as a Muslim, I could look into other religions as well and try to understand them. Because I believe God has made all religions so that they could know one another and understand one another, the different cultures and stuff like that. So for me, religion, a lot of people use religion for politics. So I'm not part of that. I'm not there. I believe in God very strongly. I believe in God. And I think what you may have overheard me and the driver talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
And he asked me, does Muslims believe in Jesus? And I said, yes, we do believe in Jesus. Because any Muslim who doesn't believe in Jesus is not a Muslim. We also believe that he'll be coming back. And he was quite surprised. He says, how come? I said, because it's in our Quran. It's stated in the Quran that he's coming back. The Messiah is like, as you guys are waiting for him, we're also waiting for him. And even the Quran speaks about the miraculous birth of Mary. So he was quite surprised when I told him. He said, "You know that?" I said, "Yes, it's all in the Quran, you know." So I don't know what we continued the conversation, and then he was saying that something about the New Testament. And I said to him, "I don't know the New Testament. Yes, I know the Old Testament, not as good as what I should, but everything that's in the Quran is based on the Old Testament." So I think we ended off our conversation when I asked him who wrote the New Testament. Was it a revelation from God, directly from God, or was it someone's idea to rewrite the Bible and call it the New Testament? And I said, "You as a Christian, you must explain that to me. Was it a revelation from God, or was someone inspired to rewrite the New Testament?" You know, so I was also trying to learn from him, and that's where the conversation stopped. You know? Yeah.
That's fascinating. You did something beautiful when you were exploring religions and sounds and music. You would obviously speak to rabbis, different spiritual leaders. What did you learn about people and their relationship with religion or God and their way of life? How does religion inform people's way of life in the Southern African region or any other region that you've been in?
Well, I mean, when we did Southern Rhythms, it was, that was a mind-blowing experience for me. I've learned so many things. And I just wanted to know the punchline. Who believes in who, and who believes in who, or who believes in what?
Yeah.
And the punchline was that I came to the conclusion that we are all one big family. We come from the same God. We worship Him differently. But when we talk about God, we speak about the same God. The same God who sent us to earth, and is the same God who we'll be returning to until the day of judgment or whatever you know, and say when you find out what you did right and what you did wrong, you know. So that's my feeling, that we all believe that the whole world is just one big family. And politics, unfortunately, has mixed things up where people look at each other differently. Like, oh no, I don't want to speak to him because he's a Muslim, or no, I don't mix with Christians, or I don't mix with Jews, you know. But that's all politics. We shouldn't be looking at politics. We should get to know one another the way God wants it to be. Like, I want to know more about Christianity, so I would definitely go to a Christian church, or I would sit down with the priest and say, "Tell me more about Jesus, tell me more about Abraham, or tell me more about Moses." You know what I'm saying? And same as the Jewish faith, I would ask them, "Tell me more about your religion." So every person, irrespective of color, creed, or religion, has got the right to find out about other religions so that we could understand one another and see where the differences are. Why am I different to you? Why are you different from that religion? Or whatever the case may be. So there might be slight differences in religion. This might not be the same as what it is in the Quran, and someone else might believe differently. But at the end of the day, we're one big family, and we have one thing in common. We all believe in God. And that's the same God. And that's the punchline. That's all you need to know. There's no good without a bad. There's no without a yes. Everything goes together.
It's the yin and the yang.
Yes. You know?
When
you get good Muslims, you get bad Muslims. You get good Christians, you get bad Christians. You get good Jews, you get bad Jews. And it goes on and on and on. There's no wrong without a right. You know, there's no good without a bad. It's all the same thing.
When you interacted with the Khois and the Sans, for example, you may have interacted with other tribes as well. Tribes that are not necessarily... So if we organized religion, the way that it was transported to Africans was through colonialism and the missionaries. Sometimes it was imposed, most of the time. Eventually, some people adapted to it because they could see it's organized. Maybe they saw the appeal to it, but the way that in which it interacts with the first Africans was through antagonization and forcefully. When you interact with tribes that appear as though they've never engaged with coloniality at the level that we have. They dress up in animal skins. Do they sound like they follow the same pattern of God that we may be thinking of when we talk about God?
Well, in the case of the sun from the Kalahari, they see God and they have a name. I think they call him Tria.
Yeah.
Tria. Tria. That's God to them. And I remember in Platfontein, there was a girl who was preaching to her children before they went to bed. And she was making a prayer in the San language. And at the end, she said, Amen. So she was actually, conversing with God, making this prayer. And I do know that in some places, you'll find colonialism wants to take over in some communities, mainly rural communities who hasn't been in touch with Western civilization.
Yeah.
They would then introduce the Bible to them and tell them about God and Jesus and all that. And of course, the San people, they're very intelligent. They're extremely intelligent. I mean, they won't tell you, look, we don't believe in what you're telling us, They'll just accept you for whatever message you brought to them. And when the missionary leaves, they would just leave the Bible aside and just go back and continue doing the trance dance, because that's what they believe, how they connect with the ancestral world.
Yeah.
And through the ancestors, they would speak to the ancestors and tell them, because they believe, like most other religions believe, that your ancestors are the people who are more clean, because they passed on and their spirit and their souls have been clean and they know God. So some people feel that some cultures believe that we are not pure enough to be talking to God. So we'll rather speak through our ancestors to ask God for our needs or whatever we need, whether there's drought or anything. That's how much respect they have for God. Like in the same way, if you want to speak to Cyril Ramaphosa, you can't go directly to him. You have to make appointments through this channel and through that channel before you can see him. And that's how some cultures operate.
Yeah. But you always took it to the punchline that it is some form of a God that everyone praises.
That everyone prays to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. The idea of God, and of course, it's as you said, when it gets political, it becomes organized, and people must toe some line, one way or the other. You 73 now. Do you introspect a lot about God and you meeting your maker and what that looks like, particularly in the context of you being a Muslim? As you age, you think about your mortality. Do you think about what happens beyond this life?
I think I was talking to a priest the other day, and I asked him what is the best form of meditation in the evenings. And you know what he told me? He said to me, you lie down quietly, relaxed, and think about your death. Think about how you're going to die. Think about how people will be coming to your home to watch your body. Think about how they're carrying your body to the grave. Think about how they're filling the grave with the sand and how they're leaving the graveyard. you meditate on that, which will give you more fear of God. Like, I'm not ready yet to die. I need to do more in terms of God, to do the right things, pray, give charity, be nice to people. And in other way, before you are nice to other people, you got to be kind to yourself. You got to clean your whole soul. So you find all of a sudden there's so many things you want to do, and all of a sudden you fear death. So if you fear death, you fear God, because His punishment can be severe. But God is very merciful in the same time as well. His mercy is so great that it overtakes His anger. So, and you think about, what is the first thing I will tell God when I meet Him one day? Because that's one thing that we can't avoid. Each and every one of us has to meet Him. So what would be the first thing you'll be telling God? What will you say to Him? Because if you think about that, that's like the most scariest moment of your life. So this is what He told me, this is how you meditate, because it will restrict you from doing a lot of wrong things, like saying, if I get married, I don't want to leave a lot of baggage behind. You've got to respect God more. So there's many forms of meditation. You know what I'm saying? You could meditate by just reciting God's name, or you could just lie down and just relax your body. There's many ways. But this was, when he told me this, I went like, wow, like that's really deep, man. You know what I'm saying? So you ask yourself, are you ready to die? You know what I'm saying? Am I ready to die now? And if you think that you've been very good on earth and you've done everything you need to do for the pleasure of God, then it's okay. But nobody knows, not even a priest knows what the final outcome is going to be. So I think that the best gift that you can give anyone is to pray for him. Like if I want to give you a gift and I don't have money, I'll pray for you in the evening to say, keep him safe, him and his family, bless him in abundance. He's such a great guy, and keep him safe. Please, any misdoings, any faults that he's had, please forgive him. And that you pray without telling the guy, you are always in my prayers. You know what I'm saying? So you pray for them instead of looking down on someone, like a nyope, for instance. Many people just look at them like, But we all are equal. No man is better than the other one. You may be more advanced, or you may be having more money than someone else. And a lot of people look at you once and they judge you already just by looking at you. I'm better. You know what I'm saying? But we are all equal.
In the eyes of God.
In the eyes of God, we are equal. And if you can see someone else as your equal, respect that person. Well, of course, we know some of the nyaopes or other people who beg for money. You give them money, they'll be buying drugs or whatever the case may be. Obviously, you're not going to give him money, because they're going to abuse the money. If you want to give charity, you give it to the ones that you think they need the most. And before you do that kind of charity, you look in your family first. Who are the people in my family who needs money or who needs food? So that's where it starts. So you got to start cleaning out all the ims inside you if you want to meet God, because God is pure, So you clean the ims. I'm this and I'm that. You know what I'm saying? And to get rid of that is a difficult thing. To love yourself. You must remember we have pride as well.
Yeah.
And to get rid of your pride, we like boasting. If you have a new pair of shoes, you want everyone to see, you've got this new pair of shoes. So it's all these little things that we think are not important, which is very, very important for you to discover yourself. Like, for instance, if you go into your bedroom at night, you turn off the lights and you light a candle, look at yourself in the mirror, and you have an interview with yourself. Who are you? What's your purpose here on earth? Why are you here? Or why did you do A? Why did you do B? Why did you do that? Some things that you may have done wrong. And you find the answers.
I'm so sorry to cut you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Is that the wisdom that you incur over time? Because I think that because there's a generational gap, the mother is older than the son. The father is older than the daughter, and we have varying levels of wisdom. And wisdom doesn't always come with age, obviously. A 12-year-old can be wiser than a 35-year-old in other instances.
Absolutely.
Is your perspective now is very refreshing. People are watching it and they are impressed by it, and it's helpful. And that's why I wanted to speak to people like yourselves, because they have so much experience and wisdom to impart. Is that something that rings a bell when you're in your 50s, in your 60s, in your 70s to you personally? Have you always had the same outlook in life? Do you have any regrets in the way that you approach life at some point in your life?
I don't think I regret my life. I mean, there were some mistakes, stupid things I may have done and all that. But as you get older, you must remember, I think any 70 or 73-year-old will tell you, as you get older, your friends become less. You have lesser friends.
Yeah.
And you start realizing, where am I going to if I live up to the age of 85 or 90? What's my future? You know what I'm saying? How do I prepare myself? I'm 73 now, and I'm looking forward for another 73 years, God willing. So what am I going to do? You have to be very optimistic, and you have to be precise in what you're doing, because now you know that every day is a day nearer to your grave. You know what I'm saying? And these are things that you can't avoid it. You have to realize that, I'm living in my bonus years now. God is blessing me with these extra years, and there's got to be a reason why He's kept me. So I've got to start checking out, why am I still here? And I think I've always been a spiritual person. It's just like now I'm trying to discover more about me, trying to find out who is. My real name is Ismail Mohamed. So I want to find Ismail. Who is Ismail? What does he want out of life? And you realize that, people go their different ways, so you're not in touch with your old friends like you used to and things like that. Sometimes you would call someone you haven't spoken in 15 years and you find he's changed completely, that he's not even excited to hear your voice. He'll just, oh, you're still around, that kind of stuff. Like he's basically saying, I thought you dead, So, and you could just get the tone. You could read that, okay, this guy has moved on, although he's been my best friend 15 years ago. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm interacting with a lot of younger people, doing collaborations with them. Like one of the people I work with a lot is Ntiki Mazwai. We've done a few recordings with Zaps, hip-hop stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also do trance music, garage, trap, and all that stuff. This is the other side of me.
Sure.
So as I go along, I try to discover my spirituality. What is my totem spirit? So I discovered that my totem spirit is the eagle. I see the world through the eyes of an eagle, because I always, since I was a child, I always dreamed that if I'm in trouble, I always used to do this, and I fly away. So that's an eagle. I see the world through the eyes of an eagle, so that's my totem spirit. But I need to find my spirit to free myself, So how do I free myself? Is to get rid of my aims. So whenever I pray, I would ask God to say, please take my pride away. I don't want to boast. Don't let me show off in front of people. I don't want to be the center of attraction. Sorry, I've got a cold. So, and I know a lot of people tell me that, you're a legend, you're such a great guy, and, you've done so many things in your life. And you go like, yes, yeah, I've done so many things in my life, people see me as that person. But how does God see me? How much have I done for God in His path? Because surely when you meet God, you won't be discussing that you got so many trophies and things like that. I won, this and this. I've got this award and that award, and I made so much money. Because they're not interested in that. God wants your heart. What's in here? Clean. So what have you done for the pleasure of God? To please Him in order to get into paradise, if you want to say that. So it's fine, yes. People say you're legendary. Yes, I'm, in the world, but in the eyes of God, I don't know how He sees me. So I need to do more and discover more of that world and know more about that as well. And as my journey continues, I'm learning more and more and more and more.
How urgent is that when you are in your 70s? Is this something that you've always been trying to do, help to please God, be a better person, check the ego, check the pride? Or does this feeling, what I want to understand is, does this feeling get more urgent the more you start thinking about your mortality?
Yeah. Because when I started being serious about, like saying, oh man, I haven't been to a mosque in a long time, I've been neglecting my religion, so I need to go back and start, getting into the thing, And I discovered that I've lost out so much and I have to learn so much. I found out that I can't read Arabic anymore. I couldn't read the Quran anymore. Although I could go into the mosque, like on Fridays we go to mosque, on Friday mosque. I could do my prayers and everything, but when it came to reading the Quran, I discovered, oh gosh, I can't read Arabic anymore. So I started classes again. Now imagine me, 73-year-old, going to classes. I spoke to one of the priests and he said, oh yes, we do have adult classes, people your age. So I'm quite happy to be there. Now all of a sudden everything is coming back, and as you go along, so you find all of a sudden you're in a whole new community of like-minded people where you learn, you want to be with wiser people, you ask questions and things like that, so I'm quite happy where I am. And of course, I think it makes the music even stronger.
In your quest for this connection with yourself is multi-layered, and so are a lot of other people. There's the spiritual side, and then, of course, there is the side that's biological. The biological side is connected to the spiritual in that if your father is Islam, Indian, Portuguese, it informs why you Muslim. Have you taken time to explore the African Xhosa side?
Not really. But I've spent a lot of time with the Xhosa people, checking the religion, the culture, the food, and all that, just for my own interest. So I've toured with a lot of Xhosa groups as well. We got sponsored. And I've learned a lot of musical instruments.
Yeah,
From
I've
across
seen you with Uadi and Umkhube.
Yeah, yeah,
and that's
yeah.
why that's what intrigued me with that you would have
Yeah.
picked up from there.
Yeah, you know. So I've learned quite a lot from there, and I have a great respect for them, you know, because somewhere in your heart you say to yourself, "Well, this is part of my roots," you know. Yeah,
Yeah. Can we maybe delve into the music now? And I really appreciate you talking spirituality to us, with us, because when we do these YouTube channels on digital platforms, there's a clear lack of a voice, the voice of a 50-something-year-old person, 40-something-year-old person, 70-year-old person. There is a clear lack of abantu abadala to impart knowledge and wisdom, and that's why I felt it was so urgent that we have this conversation. And I'm happy with that. We dealt with the spiritual side. Of course, we didn't cover all the angles, but with the little time that we have, we tried. I think your album 1997. It's on Spotify here. I was listening to it. I think that album is fascinating, and I would like you to take us through the journey of that album, how it came about. It's on Spotify. I say that so that anyone who wants to go and check out that album, they can go and check it out. It's beautiful. How far we've come, 1997. The song Spirit is there. The Spirit. My understanding of it is that you interact and engage with the Sands and the Khois. You sample their sound, you listen to how they play their indigenous musical instruments, and you infuse it with jazz elements. And what comes out of it is one of the most beautiful things anyone will ever hear in music. And I think, and I said this to you before we started recording, that after that, and of course it speaks to the pride and being boastful, but after that, you must feel a great sense of fulfillment that as a musician, I've done this.
Yes.
This is one of the most beautiful things ever done in the world ever. Take us to the journey of that album.
Well, it started a long time ago, long before 97. I've always been exploring different indigenous African instruments and things like that. And then when it came to the San, I've been looking for music on the San, which I couldn't find at music stores or anything. And my last resource was I had to go to the SABC. And I asked them, do you have any music on the San? They said, no, we don't have. I said, but can you check? And they checked out. And they said, we do have something on the San, but it's on a reel-to-reel, the old tape machines. We'll have to transfer that onto cassette for you. This was like in the late 80s. So I said, okay, that's fine. And they charged me 30 Rand for that. 30 Rand was a lot of money back in those days, you know. So they transferred it for me. I took it home and I listened, and only to find that it was dubbed in Afrikaans. Luckily, I speak Afrikaans as well. So the person who recorded the San people recorded the San in 1952. This was a journalist from BBC, from the UK, who recorded the San, and he took it to the archives in England. But then SABC bought the tapes back from them, which is really weird, and kept it in the archives and didn't do anything about it. So I listened and I listened and I listened, and the music was so amazing. It was something I've never heard before. You know, it's like music from a different planet. The chanting and the clapping of the hands and things. And I said, this would be amazing if I could get to the Kalahari Desert and see if the music is still the same as what it was back in 1952. You know, so that was my challenge. To cut a long story short, I met up with the label manager, the owner of the company called Melt. He came to South Africa, and he invited me to come to the first Arts Alive festival ever. and they had quite a few bands who were performing there, and he brought his own artist, Flora Purium was performing there. She was a great jazz artist, and he said, I'd like you to come and listen to Flora Purium and Ayrton Morera, great percussionist. And then the guitar player, his name was Jose. So Ayrton Morera is very popular for the movie Apocalypse Now. I don't know if you know that movie. It's a very old movie by Marlon Brando. And there's an amazing solo, conga solo. And that's the main part in the movie, is playing that conga solo over the scenes of Vietnam. So that's how he made his name. So he said, Ayrton Morera and his wife is here. So I said, I'd love to meet Ayrton. So I went to this concert and I watched them perform. And after the performance, I met them and we spoke and everything. And so this guy asked me, Robert is his name, Robert Trant, how would you like to work for my label? I'm starting a new label in the UK. And I said, that would be impossible because, I'm here in South Africa. And he said, you just travel to the UK. And I thought about it, and I said, okay, let me give it a bang. So I went to the UK, and I started recruiting artists. In fact, that same night when I watched Flora Purium and Ayrton, I took him to Kippies, the old Kippies, where Moses Nkululeko was performing.
Yeah.
And he fell in love with Moses' music. He asked me, do you know the guy? I said, yeah, he's my friend. I know him very well. I know him since he was 13 years old. And he said, I'd love to record him. I said, no problem. So when I got to England, I started recruiting all these artists, Moses. And I produced Moses' first album, which won 2 awards.
Yes.
So also recorded by Peter Thwaites, the sound engineer I was telling you about.
Sure.
And then he said to me after almost a year or so that, Pops, how would you like to do your own album? Because we've got all these artists and we don't have you. And I said, if I do an album for you, I want to start off in the Kalahari Desert. I want to record the Sand People. I want us to give them a contract so that they can at least be independent and have their own publishing company and things like that, And they just fell in love with the idea and said, wow, Kalahari Desert. He said, wow, that's amazing. So they were looking forward to that. So they organized a whole crew, cameraman, and you just name it. And we went down to Windhoek, and from there we took a jeep and we drove to the desert. Through a friend that I knew, or I just met this guy who worked for the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation, and he knew the communities in the desert. So he was our guide, and he took us to
Kalahari.
To the Kalahari, which was about 3 hours away from Windhoek, and that's where we met the Sand. And we stayed there for about a week. He explained to them what I want to do. I want to fuse the music and whatever. And they agreed. So I think we stayed for one night. Nothing happened. And then the following night they had a big bonfire there. And then all of a sudden they started dancing and doing the trance dance. And the cameras were rolling, and we started filming them. And also on the DAT cassettes, we had those small DAT cassettes in those days. So we recorded the audio and we recorded the film. And I brought all that material back to London. So but what I did during our visit in the Kalahari one evening, I took a 90-minute DAT tape and I had 2 ambient microphones just outside my tent. And I set the time for 90 minutes. And all I just recorded was just ambience, nothing else. I just recorded nothingness. And which was quite interesting, after 90 minutes, I turned it off. And when we went back to England, we discussed it with the album with the sound engineer, how we want to have it done. And then I had to put a band together. Obviously, it had to be London musicians. And Robert introduced me to some fantastic musicians from the UK. Those are the ones who are performing on the album. So, I mean, I could easily have asked South African musicians, for him to... I could have used the musicians who were signed to the label, like Moses and all that. But I deliberately wanted to have a UK-based band because they have that international feel, but also trying hard to sound African. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Would it be a challenge for them?
It would be a challenge for them, and it would be a pleasure for me because I was looking for a particular sound. So that was amazing, and I showed them now all the tapes, the VHS tapes of the San people, so that they could have an understanding of where the music came from. So we watched all the tapes and everything, and they were quite happy, and whatever they saw, they were really thrilled by it. And then we got a backing group, 4 girls. One of the girls is Sipho Mabuze's daughter.
Sipho Hot Sticks, Mabuza.
Sipho Hot Sticks, yes, yes. She grew up in London, but she's born in South Africa. It's a long story, but maybe we'll talk about it later. But anyway, Mpo, she was one of this a cappella group called Shades. But I had met them before, like 3 years before, when they came to South Africa for the very first time, when South Africa had the first, Johannesburg had the first Biennale, and they got bands and groups from different parts of the world to take part. And that's where I met this a cappella group, and I really loved them so much. I made contact with them because they were living in Yeovil at the time for their 2 weeks. So I said to them, one day if I come to England, hopefully if I do come to England, I'll get in touch with you. So I got in touch with the one girl, my connection, and she invited the other 3 girls as well to the studio. So they are the backing vocalists on the album.
Oh, nice one.
Yeah. And so I took this DAT cassette, and I gave it to the sound engineer, this one that's got nothing on it. And I said, before you do anything, I want you to transfer everything that's on here onto the tape. And he said, okay. And he transferred, and he said, but Pops, there's nothing here. I said, well, that's exactly what I want. I've captured that feel of the Kalahari Desert. So he laid it down. But every now and then in the album, you would listen to the sound of an animal coming towards the microphone.
Yes. Are there some gunshots or some bangs as well? Like randomly, there would be bangs at some point as I was listening.
Yeah. Those we created, me and the engineer, a gunshot on the track. On the track, Never Again.
Yeah.
We created that gunshot with a snare. I'll tell you about that. But anyway, so... but now and then on the album, you'll hear a bee or a fly or some animal smelling at the microphone, So all those things just shoot up all of a sudden from nowhere, and that's what I liked about the album.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece. Yeah. It's a masterpiece. It's one of the best things I've ever heard in my life. I think, and I said this to you, that a lot of people, all of us, were engrossed in the idea of doing everydayness, in the idea of I'm going to do the things that other people are doing so that I can be like them or better than them. It's almost as if we are competing for the same thing. We're going to sound pop, we're going to sound jazz, we're going to sound amapiano. And when I listened to this album, I was like, I was mind blown. What do you think was what was the reaction from the label and the reception of it at the time, if you can remember?
Man, they were ecstatic. because I had to now. I've already written the songs like Spirit, Kandodo, and everything, but I had to now get the band, and we recorded the band live with the samples of the Sand People. So I had to arrange the music now, and we had to follow I didn't cut up any samples, using just snippets.
Sure.
We used the full piece, like this one track called Nabe, which means God, please help us. There's this one track called Kandodo, iyo, So we used that whole, it was a whole piece, a 10 to 12 minutes piece. So that's all they were just saying, Kandodo, all the time. But I wrote melodies, a whole piece.
Oh, yeah.
For the band.
Yeah.
So I wrote a whole piece, and I said, we're not going to cut up. We're going to follow them, not them following us.
Sure.
So we had that track right up front. And then after I've written the melodies for the band, the actual tune, we recorded on top of that. And that's how we went along. And then once we've done all the tracking, I got the girls to come in afterward to do the backing vocals, for Namibia, Kandodo, and all the other tracks, So when we had finished the album, the keyboard player, Jessica Lauren, an amazing, fantastic jazz pianist, and she loved it so much. So we did our final mix, me, her, and the sound engineer. We were the last people in the studio. This is 2 weeks later. And she said to me, Pops, I have a present for you. I said, okay, what do you have? And she said, she got onto the piano and she played the very last track on that album is a piano track.
Where we are from, where we come from. I think.
How far have we come?
Sorry,
Yeah.
yes. How far we've come.
So she
It's
played.
It's actually very beautiful.
So
Yeah.
she played. She said, "This is my present for you."
Oh.
She just played. That's the one.
Aha.
Yeah.
Aha. I there was something about this.
Yes.
And how it sounded.
Yeah.
That woke me up as the album is about to come to an end.
Yeah.
As she plays those chords, I'm like, aha, this is beautiful.
She played, and I said, Jessica, stop. And I said to Richard, the engineer, let's record this. And he said, okay. He just pressed the tape, and she started off, and then I followed her on the choral. And then...
and it's not prepared, like, in advance.
No, we didn't.
She's pretty much freestyling.
Freestyle, yeah. Yeah. She played halfway, and I said, no. Just stop right there. Let's just do this track. And I took the harp, and we recorded the track, just one take.
That's amazing.
And I said, what are we going to call the album? That's now the only thing left. And then she went like, how about, how far have we come? I said, that's it. So on the cover of the album, as you can see here, this old man, he's on the album. His name is Gubi. And it just suits how far have we come.
Yeah.
It was perfect. It was relevant. And that was the title of the album.
Yeah. It's what sense of accomplishment do you have? Like, I suppose I keep on harping on this question because I know when you've achieved something so big, in the moment you don't feel it because you're living in it and you have the talent. You're working hard and expressing your talent. So it's not something you don't just sit back and admire what you are. So you may miss.
It was a lot of hard work.
Yeah, and you may miss how big the moment is for you. What were the commercial demands at the time? Do you know if it sold a lot of albums? And
it did.
Yeah, please tell us about that.
We had Tower Records at the time in London, which is big everywhere. And then in France, we have Fnac, F-N-A-C, which is like the biggest record store. Tower Records was one of the biggest stores. It's been taken over by Virgin Records now. And when the album was released, the A&R guy from the label took a sample of, he took the album and he took it to Tower Records, and they listened and they said, well, we're trying to find the album for the month, and we think this is a absolutely amazing album. So what happens in England and other countries, Western countries, that if your album lands right in the window of the store, I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Tower Records is so big, you won't imagine. It's like almost 6 floors, and every floor has got more than 500,000 CDs.
Oh.
So you end up like the album of the month. You have your album displayed right there in the window, and as you walk into the door, there's the album. And people want the album of the month. They don't have to go anywhere. They just grab the album of the month and they buy it, And even, I don't know if you've been to the UK, but when you're taking the Piccadilly train, which is the one that goes to Heathrow Airport, and Piccadilly Circus is like the West End, where everything happens in London. So when the train comes to Piccadilly Circus, as you get out of the train, you walk right into the shop. And there you see how far have we come, album of the month. So if your album doesn't sell with a certain amount within 2 or 3 weeks, it's removed from there, and you just push in a little further. And if the sales are still not happening the way they want it, it would go further. And then the last stage is the album gets deleted. Although the album is still playing on the radio stations, it's hot on the radio stations, but they need to sell a certain amount to keep the album of the month. So your album gets deleted, and that's how a lot of South African record shop owners used to go to London to Tower Records, and they buy all deleted albums, which are still tops, and they come here and they sell it as imports.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when they delete an album, it doesn't cost £10 anymore. It's like £2.
Yeah.
So the guys would then buy a whole lot of these deleted albums and bring them out and sell them and just put the prices up. So how far have we come? Must have been in that window at Tower Records for almost 4 to 5 weeks as album of the month.
Yeah.
And it stayed on the world music charts for 18 weeks, which is a big achievement in my eyes, that an album could stay on the charts for 18 weeks, and it came down. I think we came up to number 6. And it was very well received in the UK, in France, in certain parts of America, and so on, Japan. It was a really beautiful album. It sold quite a lot. And it's still one of my favorite albums, and I'm still looking forward to do another world music album similar to How Far Have We Come. Probably use Xhosa people or something like that.
There's still scope for more to be done.
Yes.
Particularly with your skill set and your experience. What you were able to do there with the Sand People and infuse it on sound. I believe Umculo Wamagqirha, which is the sound of, it's almost a spiritual sounds that involve Umkhube and Uadi and chant singing. You could, a lot of drums, and beautiful drumming and singing. I think you can still do more of that.
Yes, definitely. There was a time when I spoke to the sponsors, or I spoke to the record label to bring the Xhosa people from the Eastern Cape, from Ngoko, bring them out to Windhoek, to Namibia, and brought the Sand people together to do one concert. So history tells us that almost 250 years ago that the Sand and the Xhosa people lived side by side in the Eastern Cape. It was when colonialism took over, when the British came in, they caused a lot of havoc between the two tribes. And that's how they split.
In fact, I'm so sorry to cut you. Like in our language, Xhosa, even the Xhosa in the core of the Xhosa, it comes from that merge.
Yes.
The
Yes.
exists in our language because we interacted with the sands.
Yes, exactly. And even if you go to the Eastern Cape, you'll find some of the streets have still got named after the Sand people. There's still rock paintings of the Sand. And I wanted to make this history in bringing these two cultures together again. And we managed to get sponsorship. And I managed to get one of the girls from the a cappella group, Zina Edwards, from the UK. We managed to bring her over to the Kalahari Desert. And imagine a young London girl coming to the Kalahari Desert. It was mind-blowing for her. It's an experience that she will never, ever forget in her life. And we put this concert together for the first time where you have Xhosa people and the Sand people. They didn't understand each other's language, but the music spoke for itself. And that concert was absolutely magical. It was at the warehouse in Windhoek. I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
So I still see myself doing another world music album, with the same qualities as How Far Have We Come. And definitely it would be Pops Mohamed reloaded. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I
would be looking forward to that. I know that I only have you for an hour, we're almost there. I'm going to try and wrap it up as quickly as I can.
No, you can carry on. It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. South African jazz musicians are prolific. The standard of the music that they create is quintessentially South African and African. You can play... Of course, I'm 1990, so my generation is people like Abothandi Ntuli, Abo Luanda Kokwana, Sisonke Konti, Hebi Tswayeli, all the younger guys I am more focused on in terms of learning jazz music, because I'm learning jazz music. How did we achieve a standard where the world respects us to a point where Zimngqawana is in demand? Brahima Segela is in demand. Moses Daiwa Mulelegwa is in demand. I know that a guitar is a guitar, and wherever you are in the world, you can conquer that because it only has limited number of notes. And if you practice it 10,000 hours, you can master that. How did we achieve that? The respect and being sought after by international record labels as South Africa?
Well, I mean, some people just have the talent. And I think that we still have that kind of talent in this country. It all depends on the marketing of how record labels believe in South African music or African music per se. I at one stage said that I would love to see Western people from the West buy South African music with the same love as what we do with their artists.
Absolutely. That's a good point.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They buy it because they love it, they've seen the band, and there's royalties coming into the country. But in those years, a lot of people coming from abroad would come to Africa, they'll go to the Apartheid Museum, and they'll go here, they'll go to there and there, all the famous places, and go to Kruger Park. And then on their way back home, they'll buy an African CD as a novelty, just to prove that they've been to Africa. You know what I'm saying?
Not as the first thing that they need to acquire.
Yes. So, I mean, I was really pressing on that. And I think I may have said it overseas as well during an interview, that people should buy our music with the same passion. Because our kids and we ourselves, we love, I mean, I'm a great fan of Quincy Jones. I had the privilege to meet him. I had the privilege to sit with Quincy Jones for 3 hours just chatting to him. I had the privilege to perform for him. And they have a whole structure of how they market things. Abroad, they know who the next Whitney Houston is going to be, who's going to be the next Mariah Carey. So the career of overseas artists only lasts for about 5 years, because then the crowd there gets very tired, so they want to see a new artist. You know what I'm saying? So they've got it worked out that, for instance, you might be the new Drake. And they see the talent in you. You've got the looks and everything. Like, okay, right, that's the dude we'll be having. So they approach you and they give you, say, we're giving you $100 million for the next 5 years. Whatever you do with this money, it's your indabas. But we want you to move out of the ghettos, move out of Harlem, come to LA, buy yourself a house, and buy yourself a car, because you'll be having interviews, people will be coming to your home and everything. So you have $100 million for 5 years that you can play on. Plus, you'll be touring the world and you'll be making money on shows. And that's the structure. So after 5 years, people get tired of you. I mean, Beyonce, she's great. Mariah Carey is great, but people don't talk about them anymore. You know what I'm saying? Nicki Minaj and all that. People forget about you, so they want the new thing. So in terms of African music, they had Salif Keita, they had Youssou N'Dour, and they had
Angelique Kidjo.
Angelique, and a few others, Umari Sangare, and all that. So they wanted something from South Africa. And I think that's how they discovered Moses Nkululeko and see what his track record is, Zemngcowana. And the record label knew that the A&R people at WorldMad and all that are looking for African artists that they can promote to have them on tour. And that's how they discovered Zim, Moses, Busi Mhlongo, and all those people, Amampondo as well, you know. And that's how the guys made it. But the thing is, Moses and Zim and all those people, they put in a lot of time. They practice a lot to be noticed. You know, a lot of artists, unfortunately, if they have one hit, they get lazy to make another hit. You know what I'm saying? Thinking, oh, I've got it made now. You know, I sold 60,000 or 75,000 albums. You know, I've got some money, and he banks on that. And the next thing is he wants to do his next album. So he makes his next album similar to the first one, and that's the wrong way to go, because you're only as good as your last job. So if you're right at the top and you want to remain there, what's it going to take for you to remain there? Because there's only one way. You can't go up higher, you only have to come down. So what do you do in order to stay there? And that's what makes the difference between a world music musician and commercial artist. There's a definition in being famous, and there's a definition to be known. I'm not famous, and I chose not to be famous. I chose not to be like a pop star, whatever it is. You go to the UK and you say, Pops Mohamed is coming. Everyone knows Pops Mohamed. So we haven't seen him in 6 years. So everyone goes to watch my concert. And that's how it is with all the other West African artists. People know you. But you're not a superstar. You're a down-to-earth person. You know what I'm saying? But if you're famous, you know, you're wearing all the blings and stuff like that. How long are you going to hold on to that? Do you know what I'm trying to say? To stay up there. If we look at artists like Zahara, for instance, when she came out with her first album, it was just a killer.
Breakout album. Beautiful. Reached South Africa.
Yes.
Hundreds of thousands of people buy the CD.
Yes.
In a time where people don't buy CDs.
Exactly. And she's won 11 awards. Not even Brenna Fassie got 11 awards in one night. I don't know of any artist in South Africa who got 11 or 12 awards. Abroad, maybe you may have people like Quincy Jones and some of the big artists. not even in the UK, with all the big guys like, Goldie and all them. They never got 11 awards in one night. So you sit down and you work out all the mathematics. So how did this happen? You know what I'm saying? How long is she going to stay up there to maintain that? So you find a talent, and you know this person is very talented, and you know this person is going to make a big name for herself. You don't squeeze all the juices out. So they've taken out all that she could give, and that's where the mistake was. You know what I'm saying? Like they've used everything that they could in order to get it to the top. And then after that, it's like, what do we do now? I don't know how well the second album did.
Yeah, it's obviously lower than the first. And I think she released something either 2022 or 2021, which was significantly less than whatever she's ever done. So you can go from 300,000, for example, or 500,000 to now be like at maybe 30,000 or 50,000.
Yeah,
that's a huge departure from what you've achieved.
You see? So that's what I'm talking about. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons why after 45 years I'm still in the music business, because I chose not to go that way. Not to go commercial. Just to be a world music musician. I don't have competition from other people. The people who does the same music as me, we are all friends because we are like-minded. People like Dizu Plaikis, and Mhlanganiso, and all the people who plays indigenous African instruments, we are all friends. And we learn from one another. Because this is a struggle to keep up these indigenous instruments and how to preserve it, to protect and to preserve for future generations to come. How are you going to preserve an instrument when we have millennial children? The kids of today are so advanced in everything. If I play a pattern like this, for instance, to a millennial child, a 15-year-old boy, and I'll go... So it rotates. So the kid would say, yes, I get that. So what happens next? And you see him going like this, So he's heard that, but for me, this means a lot, what I've just played, because I feel it. I know where it's coming from. I know the roots. I know the history of the instrument. But this kid hasn't got time to be listening to something that's repetitive.
It's in a loop.
It's in a loop. So he's asking you what happens next. So you could lose him easily when you say nothing happens next. So you got to be smart. And that's why I recorded an album called The Futurist. Have you ever listened to it?
Yes, I listened to it.
It's a house album.
Yes. And even the way that it's written in a very clever way. The word future and wrist. And there's some mixes by Root Boy Paul, some DJs, some house DJs.
Yes, I got all of them, and I gave each and every one of them to remix a track. So I took all the remixes and I put it on the same album.
Yeah.
So that was not an experiment, but that was a way of showing the younger generation that you could use African indigenous instruments for any platform. You
I think
house.
The closest house musicians that tried it, the Twins, the Revolution.
Yes.
And they actually were commercial and they won awards using it. And I remember being fascinated by them because that instrument that you've played, I don't know whether it was Philip Tabane who was helping them if he was still alive at the time, but there was a man who looks like Philip Tabane. I was young at the time.
It was Philip.
And he was playing that instrument. So there's Revolution here. DJ Christos and Black Coffee remixed Code 2005. DJ Mbuso remixed the song. There's Anna Igubi and Root Boy Paul and Jera is there as well. And I thought that was fascinating because it shows that you are willing to experiment and expand your sound.
Yes.
To enter into places that you've never been in.
Exactly. So I did the whole album at home, this house album using indigenous instruments. And that creates a new interest in the younger generation. Like, wow, I'd love to play the mbira. I'd love to play that instrument and produce house music, So I don't want indigenous instruments to end up in a museum one day. And when the grandfather walks with his grandson, and he'll say, Dad, what's that instrument? And he'll look at it and he'll say, oh, I remember there was a guy called Pops Mohamed. Many years ago, he used to play it. And the boy would say, so is there anyone playing it today? Unfortunately not, because there wasn't anyone who could preserve it. So in order to capture the young generation is to play this music in a form that they would understand it.
Yeah. How did you achieve mastery of these instruments? Because you are known as a multi-instrumentalist, or multi-instrumentalist, however you say it. But how did you achieve mastery of all of them? What's your attitude going into a new instrument that you've never played before? Like, what's your process, and how long does it usually take you to achieve mastery of it?
Well, I used to travel. At one stage, I even bought a plane ticket and I went to Lesotho to go and find out about the lisiba, which is an instrument that the shepherds use, when they're out there in the fields and they have this long broomstick that's got a string tied to it, to a feather. And they would blow onto the feather and it gives a sound like a harmonica.
Oh.
So they would play the whole day, like playing for the sheep. So that's how they spend their time, which is a very difficult instrument to play. And I was so fascinated by this instrument. So I didn't know where I was going to. I just took the plane, got to Lesotho, got into a taxi, and I was going to book in a hotel. I said, take me to a hotel. And as we drove, I saw a shepherd on the way, sitting there blowing the instrument, and I told the taxi driver to stop, and he stopped, and I went to this guy and I asked him about the instrument, and he said to me, well, in town there's a certain place where you could find people playing the instrument. So as we got into town, there was another man involved. He was a professor, that's right. He took me to where this bunch of people were sitting in a tent, and these guys were playing the hell out of this instrument. And I filmed them. And that's how I learned. But I still haven't mastered the lisiba because it's so difficult. But that's what I did. I went from village to village, or whichever country I go to, I try to buy an instrument and get the musician to teach me, and so on and so forth. Or if you say to me, oh man, I'm going to Ghana, and I'll just say to you, buy one of the main instruments, but buy it from a musician. Don't buy it from a touristy shop or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's how I've learned all the instruments,
And you're attracted naturally by the way it sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes through in the music that you play. Like I'm fascinated by sounds, but I'm not proficient in any instrument, and it's something that I'm gonna take on. And I can pick it up from you that as soon as you hear something that sounds different, something that sounds fascinating, it fascinates you. You want to learn it. You want to do it.
Absolutely. And I know the twin brothers, George and Joseph. They visit me at my studio sometimes.
Yeah.
And I would visit them at their studio. So I played on one of their albums. So we like this, And Black Coffee used to hang out at their studio before he became famous, you know, just checking out what the guys are doing, and so on. He got inspired by them. They inspired him. And he went on and he did his own thing.
It took it to another level.
Yes, he took it to a different level,
Yeah.
you know. And we're so proud of him, what he's done with African music, you know, and with one hand, you know.
Which is extremely fascinating.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So, so I've been going from place to place and reading books, buying books, different kinds of books, going to bookstores, trying to read everything that I could find on African indigenous instruments. I said, I'd love to play this instrument. Where do I find it? And I would call around and people would say, oh, you've got to go down there, or you've got to find there, go there, get contacts and things like that. That's how I've learned, you know. The biggest one was learning to get hold of the Khoisan people and learning their music. So I had to actually go to Namibia. And luckily, the record company sponsored this whole trip to the Kalahari Desert. And I've been going there ever since.
Yeah.
Every 2 or 3 years, I would go and visit them. Now we're like one family. You know, they use cell phones now, so it's so easy to get hold of them.
Yeah.
You know? So it was amazing. It was amazing. So I'm still thinking of doing some more recordings with them. You know? As a matter of fact, there's a single that I've got. I don't know if I have it on my phone, but I'm releasing a 7th single, which is dedicated to all the people that we've lost during COVID. Not only our friends, but people around the world who had lost their lives in their businesses. It's just called a tribute. Well, it's a working title at the moment.
Sure.
But I'm trying to get a good title for it.
Okay.
And I've got this young San girl who's saying something in the San language about COVID. You know, so within the next 2 weeks, the track will be ready.
Okay.
And I'll put it out as a single. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I really appreciate you coming here. When I approached you, I knew that it's important for us to have this conversation. I have no regrets about having spoken to you. Can I give you the next 4 or 5 minutes to say something to us young people? We're anxious. You know, it's weird. When you're 73 and when you're 33, there's 40 years that separates our lives. And I have anxieties about the things that I do, for example. And you may look at my anxieties and be like, I was 33 before. This is not as big a deal as you think it is. Can you please close off with a message to young people? Anything that you would like to say to young people?
Well, based on my experience in the last few years, I think you've got to be true to yourself. You have to be true to yourself. Believe in what you're doing, because if you don't believe in what you're doing, no one is going to believe in you. Another thing is we have a huge drug problem in this country. I would advise young people to stay away from drugs. Yeah, it's really killing our artists as well. Don't be proud or don't be shy to ask questions. Ask as many questions as what you possibly can. Find the time to sit down with elderly people and let them talk about their experiences of life. And take them seriously, because they won't mislead you. Because a lot of elderly people say, I wish I was your age. I wish I was 23 or 33 again. I would have done better things, you know. So if you're a musician, if you are studying a piano or if you are doing classical music, it's fine to do that kind of music. You want to play American jazz music and you're studying jazz music, it's fine to do that. If you want to be a hip-hop artist or a kwaito artist or amapiano, it's fine. But there's one thing that you must remember. Don't forget your roots. Don't forget where you're coming from. And I would encourage musicians and producers, young producers, millennial kids and producers that if you could at least study one African instrument and introduce it into your music, you will make a world of a difference. Because what the people are saying out there in the Western world and other parts of the world is, give me something that I don't know, and then I'll listen to you. Now, we've got some amazing hip-hop artists in this country. But do you honestly think we could send our top hip-hop artists to the States?
No.
You can't.
It's a product that they produced for us to consume.
But if you take a hip-hop artist from South Africa who's included maybe language for instance, and one or two indigenous African instruments, then the guys would be going like, okay, let's listen to what this kid is got to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You have to be proud of your roots. In order for you to move forward, you've got to take a few steps backwards, because you'll never know where you're going to unless you know where you're coming from. So, for instance, if you have a computer and you don't back up your data, if your computer just switches off all of a sudden and you haven't saved anything, that computer is useless to you. So you've got to have a backup of your life, where you're coming from. You're an ambassador for South Africa or Africa. So whenever you're going abroad and you have to do a workshop, whatever you do, even if you're performing, you got to tell them about your African roots. You got to speak about this imbira, where it comes from. It's from Zimbabwe, and it's been used for more than 300 years, and things like that. You're promoting an instrument, or you're promoting a language, or you're promoting food, and that these people they're listening to you because you're giving them information. And that alone will make them want to come to South Africa or want to go to Zimbabwe. Always try to be different, but you can still be cool. You can still be a cool African, wear them baggy trousers and have your cap, and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? You can still do all those things and still be African, a modern African. And then you make a difference in the world. And always respect the next person. Even younger kids, people younger than you, respect them. Be kind to them. And that's how you earn the respect of people. That's a message that I would give people. Be true to yourself.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohamed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for watching us. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching. Boom.